Hello and welcome to Champion Reviews. I'm your host Joe, here with my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
We're reviewing the Octopus Armed and Dangerous episode of the 90s cartoon. We finally moved beyond robots, and there are good moments in this episode, and not so great ones. Now, for characters, something interesting happened with Otto here. Now, in most depictions, Otto is a decent guy. His experiment goes wrong, then he goes nuts because the tentacles start talking to him, and the voice in his head tells him it's a great idea to start screwing people over and whatever. At least with the voices in my head never tell me that. They tell me to do far worse stuff. But the thing with Otto is that, like, I like how he has a line in the flashback for science camp when Peter is almost crying because the other kids are laughing at him for being terrible at science at 6 years old. What he tells them is, do not let their laughter affect you. Science is all that matters. It justifies everything. That line, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I went, oh, in this depiction, no, the tentacles did not rule the man. I think that in this case, in this cartoon, they made the bolder decision. It's not an explosion that corrupted a man. It was the man himself. But he pinned, like Eddie Brock, he projected all of his own faults onto others and said, it's them, not me. I can't do wrong.
The fact that he had no qualms in pretty much murdering Peter.
Yeah, and he would have murdered Jameson had Spider-Man not showed up.
Mm-hmm. And Peter tried to appeal.
The first time, I mean.
Peter tried to appeal as the child that learned from his science teacher.
Yeah.
Tried to appeal not just to narcissism, but it was nothing. It didn't
matter to him, yeah. I like how Felicia in this episode, I will give her this much. Although she's a damsel, some of her quips with Peter and her comments about the flowers, because he nearly knocked over one of her mother's flower-filled vases. Her comments about it are pretty quick. The writing with her has gotten better.
Yeah.
Jameson and Felicia's mom, I love the writing. Her mom's panicking, throws shade at Spider-Man. Robbie went a little further, but whatever. That said, they're both panicking and it's emotions are running high. And Robbie's heterosexual life partner, Jonah, I'm just kidding, actually his mentor and essentially father figure in some ways, is missing and might be dead soon. So I understand emotions ran high.
Mm-hmm.
As much as Robbie respects Spider-Man, he does love Jonah.
Yeah,
and in his own ways. So,
and what neither of them understand is that Jonah would have been killed by Otto, and Spider-Man's presence probably saved Jonah's life.
Because it gave Otto time enough to calm down and think about the value of Jameson. Oh, I love how Jameson's put in the position to talk as a hostage negotiator to Octavius, and he just botches it immediately. Like, this looks like great. It's just, oh my god, you have Peter thinking.
You have everyone in the room cringing.
And you have Robbie. No, Jonah, no. And I love how you had Robbie right before that. If it is him, stay cool, Jonah. Aren't I always? Jonah. I like how Peter's the only person just going, you guys were surprised. Why? I mean, you know, what was it? Jonah. The world-class hostage negotiator. And, like, Peter's the only one who's like, I am not surprised here. Why did they even assign him this job? And I do like how when Peter goes to tell the FBI agents, okay, listen, you can trust me to do a better job than Jonah here later. Let me do this. I know the guy. Let me try to just get into his head a little. And I like how it takes a bit more convincing because they're kind of, I think that the Jonah thing just kind of turned. They didn't know Jonah when they should have, and they just kind of realized, oh, okay.
they suspected Peter from the beginning.
No, they didn't.
The one.
Oh, they just thought he was nuts.
Yeah. Okay.
They just thought he was crazy. But that's at that time. The second time, I think they just decided, oh,
Whatever.
we've got nothing to lose because at this point, Otto's nuts.
Yeah, and Spider-Man and Peter appealed to
Otto's better nature unsuccessfully
to the scientist.
And I do like how Otto says, "Oh, how about this one article?"
Oh, you didn't write that.
That one. You were testing me, weren't you? And you have Otto.
And you passed it. I want you to deliver the next payment.
But I also like how Peter responds with a fury once he realizes that his mentor was always a madman. And how in the fight, what he does is, remember? Oh, he tries to lure him under a magnet. It doesn't work. Then he says, okay, you know what? How's this? Your life's work, or my friends, your choice. And essentially he knows Otto cares more about his life's work than, in some ways, Peter cares about his friends. Not to say Peter doesn't care. It's just Otto's obsessed. He's a lunatic. And the thing about Otto Octavius here is he's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've been reiterating over and over again. But the thing is, he's obsessed with his life's work and thinks it has to have value. I need it to have meant something. But on the other hand, he's willing, what was it he said? Those in power get to make the rules and do as they please. You have to know that lesson by now. He is the total inverse to Ben Parker's philosophy of, with great power, there must come great responsibility. No, it's, with great power, there must always come great responsibility. And Otto doesn't understand that kind of belief system. Mm-hmm. Now I do understand they try to make you kind of feel bad for him because he was always humiliated and laughed at. But here's the thing you have to remember. He is playing with cold fission that he's going to heat up and put inside a battery pack to a large extent. Now he's trying to turn it into something you could use in place of nuclear energy. The problem is, it's fission!
It is far more unstable and dangerous.
And it's just going to go boom! So the problem here is his scientist peers who laughed at him, I'm kind of thinking they probably laughed at him and went like Jameson in the Sam Raimi movie. Wait, you serious? They were probably doing that and just going, wait. And when they realized he was serious, no offense, I think they probably just stared at him long and hard and went, you're fired.
Mm-hmm.
Because damn, like, how could they not go, get out? Because he's insane. Using that kind of experiment, I don't think it can end well.
Mm-hmm.
Vision is not something you play with like it's a toy.
It's like this Otto Octavius is the smartest version of Otto Octavius.
But he's also the looniest.
Yes, they took elements from
Lady
Octopus, or Carolyn Trainer,
as she's also known. Yeah, although I like Lady Ock more as a villainess.
Oh yeah, she's nuttier.
Yeah, and I like how there's a personal relationship because Ben Reilly, or the original Peter Parker, is a son to Seward. A surrogate son to Seward Trainer. But Seward's biological daughter is Carolyn. And there's automatically, from the very beginning, a rivalry between the two for this reason. They're basically, in some ways, it's the story of Cain and Abel. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's sibling versus sibling. And this is iconic. It is mythological. It is mythic. But that's what the comics did better. Now, here, I do like how they inverted Parker's teachings.
Yes, you have, this Otto that has Lady Octopus's ego and narcissism, and the entire matter of science has to mean
science justifies everything.
Science justifies everything, and she wants to be recognized.
And she also has to believe power. Those with power make the rules. And which is basically a might makes right type of mindset. Except she's way more brilliant in the comics. But
yeah, and nuttier.
Yeah. But this auto, I guess, was good. Felicia Jameson. Oh, Jameson's the high point of this episode. I love Jameson.
Jameson is the high point of the series.
Well, one of them. He's the best part of the Sam Raimi movies.
In fact, it's like in many mediums, he makes things very entertaining. Like
in your fanfic.
Like in my fanfic. He's probably one of the better parts of the Avengers cartoon. I mean, the one episode he shows up in.
Although, well, what I also like is that we get to see Felicia's background. We get a sense, considering it takes her mom a while to realize her daughter's been kidnapped, that mom's typical CEO mom. Mm-hmm. So, has no time for kid. Now, I never noticed this as a kid, but I noticed it now. There's a juxtapositioning, there's a dichotomy and a contrast between Harry Osborn and Felicia. Now, I'm going to speak of Felicia in a positive sense. Felicia turns out a lot better a person in some ways than Harry. They have the same background, except one key difference. Harry's mom died. And Norman, in his grief, tried to lose himself in his work because he couldn't cope emotionally because he loved her. I know this is a completely different kind of backstory to the comics, but Norman in the cartoon is much more nuanced, much more complex, and that's why, even as a kid, I looked at the Sam Raimi movie and said, this was garbage. How come my cartoon had a more adult attitude to the character, whereas the no offense, but the cartoon seemed more like a live-action human being, whereas the live-action Norman just seemed like a cackling Skeletor villain. Mm-hmm. But the thing is with Felicia, you've got her as a total contrast to Harry.
Yeah, one thing that I've also noticed is that elements of Felicia and her mother's status as characters reminded me a bit of George and Gwen Stacy.
A little.
Minus Gwen's
nuttiness.
Nuttiness and yandere and
her tendency to just collapse into daddy's arms crying at the drop of a hat.
Just to manipulate people. Yeah.
Also her manipulative streak to appear. Now, admittedly, Felicia is a serial adulteress in the series, jumping between Flash and Peter. Now, I know cheating on someone can be very, very horrible, but on the other hand, okay, excluding that, and I know that's a big elephant in the room, but Felicia does have her good moments. She does care about people. In this episode, she's very concerned for Peter. Her first thought when she's freed is, after she goes, oh, thank you for saving me. I do like Spider-Man's moment. It's like, how could I ever repay you? I think this is a pretty good way. He's such a perv. But Miroku's got nothing on Pete sometimes. But that said, I like how her next thought is, oh my gosh, Peter, he's hurt. Now, I'm going to say it. She is a good person. It's just like other people, like real people, she's flawed. And what I also noticed is that you've got, Jameson is a widow in this series. I don't think Marla is a thing here, but which is a shame. I would have loved to see her juxtaposed to him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he did marry his therapist, which is something that Jameson did need.
But because only his therapist could get him and could handle him. But another thing with Jonah and John is that you have a rich kid with a rich daddy. But the difference is, now I wish they had brought in John more often in the cartoon as the warden of Ravencroft or Ravenloft or whatever. Because I love the John Spider-Man bromance in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And John himself is a really well-adjusted, great guy. And you'd have the three of them contrasting. Because who's the most well-adjusted adult in some ways in Spider-Man, cartoon, and comics? John. which that's a testament to Jonah's abilities as a father.
Mm-hmm.
Despite his flaws, despite his prejudices against Spider-Man, he was a great dad. And heck, his son is often the one who says, Dad, you're wrong about Spider-Man, and you can shove it. And you have Jonah. Yeah, but he's a menace. Like, he's doing all this and this and this. Dad, I don't want you to print that story tomorrow. Oh, fine.
He has a hard time saying no to his little baby boy.
And I think his son took after Robbie in personality.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, but I know Robbie's his godfather, or his goddaddy, but I think there's no one finer that he could have taken after than Robertson. Robbie Robertson is probably the nicest guy around.
Jameson loves hard and hates hard.
Yeah.
I mean, he's protective of some of the younger reporters and photographers at Bugle.
Like Betty, Glory, and Peter.
But when it comes to people like that blasted wall-crawling menace...
Yeah. Although, I think it's also interesting how Miss Hardy is a little skeevier in some ways. Her and Norman are... Like, Norman is corrupted and his life ruined by a lot of people around him. But Norman is also... does have a skeevy side. But Ms. Hardy is even skeevier in a lot of ways. But this... I'm going to say this. I do feel bad for Felicia to an extent because you've got to bear in mind her backstory in the cartoon. Her father abandoned her. He was a deadbeat. Mm-hmm. He cared more for his own skin to an extent than his family. I know there's the whole super soldier serum thing, but the problem is if he just kept his mouth shut eventually, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I know he was in SHIELD custody for a long time, but at the same time, he was able to have an ordinary life for 30 years. So, in that regard, not to mention he is a former cat burglar. So, he essentially took his skills that he learned from super spies to profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know,
if I recall in the comics, Felicia, and this was one of her first stories as the Black Cat, she tried to break him out. He met up with her, but he confessed that he surrendered to SHIELD to make sure that he didn't slip info to the wrong people.
Like, I think the same thing is here. It's the same thing, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, how many people are likely to know his secret? Mm-hmm. Maybe if he had shut his mouth about it. Like, I know, like, oh, well, yeah, what about the 6 American heroes? Yeah, but after that, for, like, 50 years, nobody's got, like, you know what I mean? It's been 50 years. Why do you have to, like, well, there are files on them. Sure, but who has access to them? It's just that part I'm like, okay, he must have been talking to people at the pub or something. Because why would... I don't know, like, not to... But if he really cared about his family, why wouldn't he try to get them into witness protection?
Mm-hmm.
That's a major glaring plot hole. I actually think he cared more on some level for himself than Felicia and his wife. Not to say his wife's exactly a clean woman. Like,
it's like, does she love her daughter? Definitely.
But I think she loves her money more.
Yeah.
Although later that starts to change. That's the thing about this series. There's a lot of nuance. Now, I'm hard on the cat, but I do get proven wrong to a limited extent when, Kingpin comes through. But at the same time, Kingpin gives up on the Hardy family immediately after. So that kind of weakens the need to arrest him. But then again, no offense, but Fury sometimes misses the boat. He's not as competent as Batman a lot of the time. And I know it's unfair to compare them, but sometimes Fury does feel like he's sometimes a little incompetent at times. Where it's like, the reason Spider-Man bitches at him and tells him, listen, man, you're lagging 20 miles behind the supervillain here. If you had only kept track of this one detail, we wouldn't be in this mess. This is on you.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, every single time, Spider-Man is right to call him out.
Yeah.
And Fury gets testy. But I'm just saying, if it wasn't for Fury, they wouldn't be in this predicament. At times. But that, on the other hand, Fury is one of Tony Stark's best friends in the classical age of the Marvel period. And no one has done more for most heroes than Nick Fury.
And he is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. He has so many different fires to go and put out that sometimes...
Yeah, but who started the fires sometimes?
Himself. And
he wouldn't be in that mess if it wasn't for himself.
Yeah, and he does need to cover his bases a lot more.
Yeah. Well, that's why I guess Spider-Man is supposed to be there. He's supposed to cover for him. But the thing is... Anyways, we're getting off topic.
At least it's not Maria Hill.
Yeah, she's completely incompetent. You know what? The only job she's good for is fetching coffee. Nothing like Monique de la Fontaine.
Oh, yeah.
Whose job is to clean up after her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Although, that said, I do come down hard on Fury, but I do like Nick Fury. He is a good character. He is competent. It's just sometimes it's like, dude... For a competent guy, or semi-competent guy, you're incompetent right now.
Yeah.
Now, there's a reason why I said, not everyone is Batman.
Yeah.
That said, Spider-Man in this episode, it's a great action episode, it's a great action set piece, but I can't help but think that the episode could have been way better.
Mm-hmm.
I like the jokes. That's about all this episode has. Let's rate it.
1.5. Wasn't as
1 point.
Wasn't as phenomenal as others, but still entertaining.
It's entertaining. Now, for any other series, this would be like a 3. But for this series, it's a 1.
Yeah, there is better quality, and it's hard to.
Thankfully, the voice acting's on point.
Yeah, it's good voice actor for
everyone, especially Jameson. Yeah. He's no Richard Simmons, but he's good.
Wait, you serious?
Yeah. Now keep repeating that line till the notification bell activates after liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting on this video.